kind of a big deal.
Really?
People know me.
Well, I'm very happy for you.
Hey guys, welcome into a sit-down podcast with Ghazzy. This time we've invited Aaron Action RPG. Welcome in. We have a sit-down podcast where we basically don't have a podcast at all. It's basically not a podcast. We have one generic topic, and today that is going to be Last Epoch. And then we're just going to have a friendly conversation, or maybe not so friendly, and then we'll see where the conversation goes. And that's it. So welcome in, Aaron. How you doing, man? What have you been up to lately?
I'm doing very, very well. I just had, for me, the best week on Twitch and YouTube I've ever had with the launch of multiplayer for Last Epoch. So I'm kind of riding that high right now. I'm riding that high. How are you doing?
That sounds great. Oh, I'm doing great. I got a baby on the rise, and just, in less than 2 weeks. Other than that, loving the Last Epoch patch and loving the build variety. Been having a lot of fun with that. Actually, my entire mod team is playing your builds right now. So I was like, you know what? Let's do a sit-down podcast. Let's get Aaron onto this show and have a good time and just talk about it. But you've been playing Last Epoch pretty much, not exclusively, but main focus for a long time now. How do you feel like the progression has gone from the single player iterations we've seen in the past into the multiplayer section that we just got released recently?
Yeah, I've been playing Last Epoch for now probably 3.5 years, and on my YouTube channel, Action RPG, I have almost 380 videos. So I've built 52 build guides and covered like any news or updates, and I've done some streams with the HG too. And as the game has progressed, it was like, when it comes to like AAA, they were competing with them as far as content releases. And then when they decided to go to multiplayer, it took a year off, and the game lost a lot of steam, even though I continued to cover it. And now with multiplayer dropping, it just feels so good to see how many people are having fun. Like, I did a poll on my YouTube channel. It's like, what do you think the concurrent player count's going to be? 10,000, 5,000, 40,000, and it ended up breaking 40,000 players. And before that, the most we got to was 7,800. So seeing it as a top seller on Steam over the weekend, I feel like it validates everything that I've seen in the game over the last 3.5 years, because I see so many people having fun, and the game still isn't even out yet. So I'm super happy with the results and the reception. As always, you got the servers not working, and that stuff frustrates me too, and it's bugged, and I'm naked running around and all that crap. So that sucks, but EHG is good, and I think they're going to fix all that stuff quick.
Yeah, no, I've been having some minor hiccups as expected. I think it was a good choice. My understanding, EHG, for those of you who don't know, 11th Hour Games, the basically the company who was making Last Epoch, for those of you new out there on Twitch and YouTube, they were supposed to make a new class. I know they have Warlock still waiting there, the Ascendancy or Mastery, if you will, and a couple of others.
Yeah, there's 5 classes, and there will be 15 masteries. So each class will have 3 masteries. What's missing is Rogue will get the Falconeer.
Yeah.
Mage will get the Rune Master, and Acolyte, our class, will get the Warlock.
So there's only actually 3 masteries missing? I thought there were more.
That's it. There's 12 in the game right now.
Because I was hearing, or I heard that they were supposed to work on the next mastery class, and then the demand for multiplayer was so high that they put it on the shelf and were like, let's just get the multiplayer out there. And then they launched for this iteration of multiplayer functionality, right?
Yeah, that's half right. Basically, they dropped 0.85, and then they were going to drop 0.86. But they decided that they were going to axe 0.86 and go straight to 0.9, which is multiplayer. So they were going to push back the patch to the end of 2022, which then ended up pushing back the patch to March because it was just way harder than what they expected or whatever. Basically, they've had tremendous scope creep. The game started as an after-hours project on Reddit, and, it's turned into what it is today. So they're built on Unity. A lot of people are like, the game isn't visually as good as what's out there. So they just keep working on visuals and VFX and SFX and sound. And they really want people to log into the game and feel like they're playing a modern action RPG instead of something that's dated. So because of that, they're replacing all the initial assets and asset packs with ones that they have custom designed. and it's just taken a long time. It's just
Yeah.
taken a really long time. But yes, the desire for multiplayer was number one because it puts them on authoritative servers instead of offline. There's lots of people that unfortunately cheat and they mess with the code, and it's like they're been in the game for a minute and now they're level 99 because you could do that because all the files were saved on your computer. But with multiplayer, it's all authoritative. So now everybody's fresh start and nobody could cheat, which is great.
Yeah. Now they're gonna have that other problem with people botting and stuff like that.
Yeah, RMT and
Oh, yeah.
bots and all that other crap. I know it's like the next.
We'll see when that
Next
becomes an
iteration.
issue, but for now it's fun though. So their
It is fun.
initial iteration of multiplayer obviously brought up the huge topic of trade and how that
Yes.
was going to be happening, because those are like crafting or itemization / crafting and trading are like two very big topics within the ARPG world, and I think we all can agree that Last Epoch crafting is nothing's perfect, but I think that's one of the best systems we have in the current industry.
Pretty damn good. Yeah.
Yeah, I would go as far as to say that. And then the trade obviously sparks up a lot of controversial opinions from a lot of different people. Like if you ask 1,000 people what they think they should do, you'll get at the very least 500 different opinions, out of which most of those would actually be really good suggestions. And in the end, the company decided to go with a way where you can only gift items to people in your party that you're playing with at that time, and then that's it. And that seemingly was one of those situations where the vast majority of the player base did not approve of this because of a lot of people wanting to have some sort of trade. And the new current patch is that. And then they have this presented idea of how to solve this to accommodate to both sides of the corner. And I was very surprised to see this whole system, which is a faction system. We can talk about that a little bit. And what I really liked about the system, before we go into details, is how they took a very volatile topic, chose something that was in line with how they want to create the game, which is rather important for the devs to do, so they don't lose their passion. And then they took that and they created this new idea that seemingly, because we haven't seen the iteration of it, but we've seen the theoretical plan for it, seemingly allows you to actually have satisfied customers on both sides of the spectrum. And I'm the kind of guy in ARPG that loves trading and loves going big dick on those things. And I am, for the very first time, more inclined to go with the non-trading routes that Last Epoch is promoting.
Circle of Fortune player, I see.
I think it has a lot to do with the target farming, but maybe to fill people in that are unaware, since the game is still getting a lot of interaction, new players. Could you perhaps walk through and explain how the trading works now versus what they have presented that they're going to do?
Okay, so let's go in the Wayback Machine for just a second. Back 5.5 years ago on their Kickstarter page, they put that it was very important to have a player-driven economy, and they literally used that terminology on the Kickstarter. And obviously, if you think of a player-driven economy, normally the first thing that pops in your head is PoE style, right? Like players make the pricing as far as how it works. Fast forward 5 years, and they basically drop a communication that says that, hey, we're only going to have item gifting for 090. We're kind of moving away from a player-driven economy. And I've never seen more negative publicity for Last Epoch ever. I mean, you're talking the Discord, the forums, my Discord, their website, Reddit, YouTube. Everybody's making videos like, holy crap, Last Epoch is not going to have trade. And because of that, it's never going to compete. It'll still be a fun game, but it's always going to have like its own niche market. And EHG stands by that. They never said they weren't going to have trade. They just said for 090, it's not going to have trade. So they ended up putting out a survey. And that survey had 20 questions, and it broke down, hey, what would you like to see as how would you like to see trade come to be inside of Last Epoch? And they designed with a lot of the content creators. It was really cool. They invited me into the conversation, and we were able to talk through the idea of what they wanted to do. And that's what's great about the studio is that, they try to bring people in so that they're not stuck in their own echo chamber. And they created factions inside of the game. Now, the idea is, instead of just saying, okay, we've heard you, we screwed up, we need to add trade into the game, they created an entirely new end game system that really is kind of like I don't want to say revolutionizes, but they've done something different in a genre that is normally copy and paste PoE, because the PoE model is so great. They basically said, hey, you're going to pick your class, then you're going to pick your mastery, and then you're going to pick your faction. And each one of those things is going to have very different ways on how you play the game, but it's going to be in your control. So if you're a trader and you like buying and selling and giving things to people, and you're going to play with your friends and you want to be able to openly trade, you should go in Merchants Guild. And if you don't like that, you want to be solo self-found, and you want to, find prophecies, and you want to get better drop rates, and you want to craft, and you want to do everything on your own, you pick Circle of Fortune. But what's so cool about this system is, instead of basically creating two different games, Merchants Guild can play with Circle of Fortune can play with Merchants Guild. You can trade factions, and you can still item gift amongst each other. So it's still one game, but you pick the way you want to play. And in the future, they've talked about having multiple factions. So maybe there's a speedrunning faction where you get more experience, or maybe there's a headhunters faction where you're PvP and you're more focused on like boss hunts or something like that. So instead of just giving us trade, they've created an entirely new system.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool.
I think it's absolutely amazing. And the whole idea with they also had this problem with people with the Circle of Fortune approach, which is like the self-found style.
Yeah,
still applies to group self-found and stuff like that, or group self-found approaches. And they also had this issue where with the gift system, that if you played together a lot, and then you were not really incentivized to play solo because maybe you dropped something that your friend wanted or needed, they had a system for that. So that I'm not sure exactly the system was, but essentially, the more you play with a certain teammate, there will be an increased probability of you to drop in orbs that will basically be orb of gifting, that would allow you to use that on an item to make that item giftable to that specific person. And then they made
resonance. Yeah,
exactly. And then they were making it so that if you drop items with this self-found approach, which has increased drop rates for you because you have to farm yourself everything you need, those items can only be equipped by people that are with the faction of the Circle of Fortune, so that you couldn't have a Merchants Guild trading and buy a bunch of items and then just I'm gonna play the other one to farm a lot of items and then switch into merchant and sell those, because they will basically be tagged with the faction you're in, so that you can't switch that easily. But you can always switch between the two things. But if you're playing the trade version, you can only equip items that is dropped for that, or purchased or sold. Whereas in the Circle of Fortune, the self-found, self-farming approach, you can't equip items that have been sold or traded in that sense.
When we were working through the system with EHG, it was basically the 8 no-lifers, last epochers, and we tried to break it. We came up with every single concept of how one would benefit the other, or how you can cheat, or how you can buy and sell and use resonance, and how it would all work. And so far, the current system in game, with its you can only trade an item once, and you can't use MG on COF, can't use COF on MG. You'd have to we can't figure a way to break it in its current iteration. I'm sure maybe somebody can, but currently it's pretty good. It's pretty bulletproof, it feels like.
I'm very excited for it, because it's like I mentioned before, something that Last Epoch does very well for an ARPG, where the whole purpose is to grind your gear out, or farm it essentially. What's really cool with this is, sorry, can you hear that?
What is that?
Sorry, it's my fiance putting up pictures on the wall. She's hammering, sorry. So essentially, like, what's really cool with this is that they have a very effective target farming system. So if, for example, I've been playing lowlife on one of my builds recently with the Ghazzy Cryo Mage build. I mean, it was really fun to play. That required, yes, it does require 2 very specific pieces, and that would be the CAD's Exsanguinous and the Last Episode of Living, which both can be farmed from one specific area in the game, right? One of them is a boss drop, whereas the other one is a random global drop, the chest piece. But what's really cool with what Last Epoch has done when it comes to farming specific items, sure, some things are more rarer than others. I'm assuming your chest piece is farmed in the exact same way. Granted, it's a bit rarer than the low life chest piece.
It's the rarest item. It's the rarest armor in the game.
Yeah, I saw that. It's like, yo, that's crazy. But it's like what happens in that specific zone is that you can encounter maps, if you will, or these echoes, where you have a chance of where you're gonna get a chest piece, and that's gonna be a set piece or a unique piece. That's the way you can target farm. So you're gonna drop an item, and it's either gonna be a set piece or a unique for that specific slot. And in other areas, that same category applies. For example, in the Reign of Dragons area, I was farming the dagger, which I'm making a build on right now, which is the Ghost Maker. That is a unique dagger. So that allows me to target farm that in Reign of Dragons zone. So I really like that approach, which is why I'm more inclined and more incentivized to try this whole Circle of Fortune approach when that iteration of multiplayer is released, rather than just trading for it. Because to me, it feels fun to know that I can literally go in and play the game, have fun, and I can grind this place out till I drop it. And that's very different from other ARPGs.
Yeah. And they haven't really broken down yet what prophecies are going to be like how it's going to be. And they also are holding back what tier 10 Circle of Fortune will be, because we know what it's going to be for Merchant's Guild. It's going to be, you could trade anything. A legendary top item in the game, you can trade it. But Circle of Fortune, you're going to be able to target farm items where, like, do these 10 missions and you get a Bastion of Honor shield or something like that. And then tier 10, they're holding back. For me, I'm team Merchant's Guild, just because I love, like, really big on community. I want someone to be able to jump in stream and be like, dude, I can't find this item. And it's like, for 1 gold, it's yours. I could just give it to them. Like, that's what I love about the system. It's just being able to, I find a lot of stuff and it's like, oh, I found 50 of this item and I'm not going to use 49 of them. I'll just give them away. That's how I'm going to break the system. That's
also really cool, because I mean, I was trying out with, I was playing a guy called Dane, and we played Lightless Arbor Key, one of the dungeons where you gamble. Yep. And, we thought we had a lot of money going in there. I think we had like 1.6, 1.7 million. And people were telling me like about 2 million is like the bare minimum. And we were like, you know what? We have so much money. We went in. I think it took 2 minutes and all of the money was gone. So it's a really cool money dump in the game. And I mean, if you had millions upon millions, you can make that real crazy. So trading would allow you to do that actually by accumulating tons of gold. So there is a value in making a lot of gold in Last Epoch because of how you can utilize it. And to my understanding, that is the only money dump right now, right? That's basically the use of money, because respecking is cheap, buying stash tabs is cheap unless you do what I'm doing, and then it gets really expensive.
And that's what I'm doing. I was just going to say, so right now all my gold goes to stash tabs. And once my stash tabs are done, then all my gold goes to there. Because respeccing's nothing, gambling's not worth it. So
like, as a Path of Exile player, having the stupid amounts of stash tabs wasn't enough, because once the league is over in PoE, it's like I have a mess of a shit show in Standard League, and the current iteration of Last Epoch is that we will not have our characters reset. They will instead be shipped into this graveyard or sandbox area, as I like to call it, which is the Standard League of Last Epoch, whatever they're going to call it. And they're going to have seasonal events, and when that's over, to my understanding, will be shipped into this sandbox area again. I really like having the possibility to test things out. And since I'm not currently, at least, not looking to be I'm not too interested in the trade system, it would be wise for me to make sure I have one of each item in the game, make sure that they're there. If I get some with LPs, then I'll go for that. And that means I need to make sure my stashes are organized now, because organizing them later is not going to happen. Like, I know myself. No, that's not
the exact same way.
Like, fuck that. It will never happen. So right now I'm doing that as
well. I get called OCD all the time because I have a certain way I build my stash. And literally it's like organized by unique. So here's all the body armors and they're in order by level. And then I switch them out based upon better rolls or legendary potential. And I have it like people are always like, how do you do that? And I'm like, I couldn't do it the other way. I can't just transfer them in and then like try and find them later on. Like I'm crazy with my stash tabs. I want them to look good.
Yeah, that makes it easier to organize as well. It's just like, hey, I want to try a new build, and we're like, okay, I'll design it in the planner. Last Epoch tools, great websites. Shame about not having a DPS meter, but still, it's not POB yet, but hopefully we'll get there. and then having this system to see what items you want to use and be like, do I have the tools for this? And you can check your stash and you know exactly where to go. But they have a good search function though as well, so you could
They
just
do have a
dump
great
everything.
search function.
Yeah.
There's a couple things that people should probably understand about Last Epoch. And it's impossible to like stop them from happening, but EHG is building this game where you should never need a third-party tool. Create your stash tab, you don't got to go to a third-party tool. For your tabs, you don't have to buy them, you get them with in-game currency. Like they don't want you for crafting or trading, everything will be in game. That doesn't mean that there won't be things that pop up, and obviously botting and RMT, they want to try and get rid of all that crap, but they're building everything encompass inside the game.
I mean, that can easily be solved, like with people testing builds. Like they have a target dummy. They could literally just make a system that would give you a DPS display, how much DPS you're doing. I know Torchlight had a really cool system that they would show you the active DPS and how much damage you did within the last 5 seconds. So if you have like burst sequences with buffs and whatnot, then or curses and all of those things, it would display that.
Torchlight Infinite, but put it to 1 billion damage instead of 100 million. It's up to 1 billion on their training dummy now.
Yeah, duly noted. But it was fun. But I mean, having that access to such a way to verify things, verify mechanics at what scale and whatnot was an easy way to do in game. Like you mentioned, I don't have to go to a third party tool to play the game, and I think that's rather interesting, but rather important as well. Because when I'm playing a game, I believe that we streamers have a different perspective on these things, but I think that for the majority of players, the less time we have to tab out of the game, the better, because we're there to enjoy it. So if you have all these tools in the game, that's great. And that also goes into the idea of tutorial / guide systems in the game, which Last Epoch has a really good way of showing. You have a searchable menu for a I was about to say Wikipedia, but they have this tool that you can search for different mechanics and read about it in game. The same thing with the crafting. Yep. Someone in chat yesterday said that they've heard that crafting was very hard to understand, but it really isn't. You can look at the craft forge. If you bring up that menu, there's a little button called guide. You click that.
Yep.
It's like not even an A4 page. It's just a couple of sections explaining what it does, and everything is self-explanatory. And it's so easy to understand. Yep. It's in the game. I don't have to go find a YouTuber or a streamer to ask them questions or watch a guide for half an hour, 40 minutes. There is available. That content is available, and it could be good to understand what you could do or showing it, because some people have easy time learning that. I actually saw you having a video that I sent over to people for crafting specifically.
Yeah. On my YouTube channel, Action RPG, I have a how-to boot camp series.
Yeah.
Basically, it's basic crafting, really advanced crafting. I try to break it down as simple as possible. But Last Epoch's crafting, especially if you come from PoE, is so easy. It's so easy. But yeah, it's like once you get it, you get it. It's like easy to learn, hard to master. That's how I break it down.
Yeah. I mean, I have the same approach with my guys in Path of Exile, for example. I have my YouTube guide, and then I have a written guide, because sometimes people have it easier to learn in the written format, and other people prefer to see it in front of them being showcased in a video format. So I think that's great. And that also weaves well in hand for content creators to make guides on these things and make it easier for people to go through, and they can watch it when they're at work instead of booting up the game and reading it in game. And I think that that kind of content is good for the content creators. But the fact that it is so easy to understand really puts the Last Epoch difficulty level somewhere between what the current iteration of Diablo 3 is and the current iteration of Path of Exile, because they're both on opposite sides of the spectrum, whereas Last Epoch lands very comfortably in the middle, and I'm very happy with that system personally.
I got a question for you, since you've played the game for a while and you jump in for large patches. Do you think it's too easy?
I think it's too easy for the kind of player base that I am. I also know that I am part of a very, very slim percentage of the player base in the ARPG industry. I also firmly believe that the complexity levels or difficulty level of the game is honestly perfect, because it's not too hard for casual players. You have your 4 kids, you come home after work, you put them to bed, you start playing a couple hours, you go to bed, you go wake up, breakfast for the kids, drive to school, whatever, rinse, repeat. It's not too hard for those players to understand, Granted, you're streaming, so I mean, it's a little different for you, obviously.
Yes, yes.
But that kind of person would not have a hard time understanding and being able to enjoy the game to its full extent. Whereas the longevity of those players would still be able to enjoy the game for a long time forward, which is something I feel like when it's too easy, such as Diablo, would be very limited because it's so easy to get the gear, and then it's just okay. I'm just gonna get a little bit higher stats.
You get bored.
Yeah, you're kind of done within a very short time frame. Whereas you have the other side of the spectrum, Path of Exile, you can play for years and never reach your end if you're not playing enough hours and learning those things. I mean, I've played for many hours, almost 9 years in the game, and it's I'm still learning certain things in the game every now and then as well. So it's very.
I call
different.
PoE the like professional ARPG, like league of its own. You got to go to PoE University to learn it. Like those are the people that really want to grind it out.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that like Last Epoch really has found a good place in between these two, and I think that's really needed in the industry as well. So I'm very happy with it, and it's like I mentioned before, I'm also happy that EHG devs, they most of them, if not all, are PoE players and Diablo players.
Yep.
Which means that they understand the flow of the industry in a very good way because they're actively in it. Which I think is rather important. And to my understanding, they're not looking to compete with PoE. As an example, as a main PoE streamer as myself, I'm very happy with that because that means that I'm looking to see releases happen at the second or third league month of a Path of Exile league, which allows me as a content creator to play both games in a very high amount of hours spent during the years. So I'm very excited about that because it allows me to weave between two very, very, very well-defined and polished games, if you will. Because I feel like in the current state of the beta of Last Epoch, they have a polished product that just needs to fine tune and get these, the texture packages and those things resetted, if you will, or re-enable or updated, and getting their plan for content out there. And every time they introduce their things that they're working on in the background and they make that live, it's just so much better. So I'm very excited to be able to play both games personally, at least.
Nothing I can share, but I can tell you that 091 is like farther along than people probably think, seeing as we just got 090, and they used to drop a content update. So not like a patch or bug fix, but like you have something new to do every 3 to 4 months. And they were doing that when their studio was 30 people, and now their studio's 110 plus. So, I mean, but obviously the quality of the game has also improved a lot. So, the momentum that they have here, it's not like, okay, PoE has a new league and D4 is coming out, so let's pump the brakes. And we are going to move forward. We're going to get this game released. We're going to continue to give content out there so that people can continue to have fun as they learn it. And yeah, they're not going to be stupid and be like, the day D4 comes out or the day a new PoE league drops, they're going to, drop their content. So they'll be smart with their marketing and how they drop it so that people like you can play. But also they always talk about how, like we're also like not afraid to like, we're not gonna hold things back because of that. So they're not trying to steal anything from D4 or PoE. They want to make their own product, and they're going to continue to do their own thing. And a lot of people don't know this, and I don't want to speak for EHG, but they've said this, that the whole idea was Last Epoch is like, who wants to create the true successor to Diablo 2? Like Diablo 3 didn't feel like D2. So who wants to get behind like a passion project to create like the next great hack and slash that, if you were a fan of Diablo 2, is going to feel more like a classic action RPG? And what I mean by that is, and you'll understand this because you've played Torchlight, and it's probably going to be the same thing for Diablo. You log in and it's like, oh, here's your daily login and you got to click this button, and here's your weekly extra potions, and here's your monthly garbage, and have you seen the new wings that are for sale, and there's a new wolf pet. And this game, and modern games just shove all this crap down your throat, you know what I mean? And they're like, you'll never see that. You're probably never going to see a battle pass. You're never going to see any of those like modern things you see where it feels like the game was built to sell you MTX instead of building a great game, and then you want to support it, right? It's like PoE, you want to buy the packs, you want to get the stash tabs because they've created such a great game that it makes you want to support them. Like that is the idea that EHG has. Anyway,
That's a funny thing you brought up there, because I'm one of the people that advocated very positively for a battle pass. I'm actually very open for battle passes as long as they are strictly within the era of free MTXs. Like PoE, for example, they have the challenge system, so you always have the availability during a new league to collect free MTX rewards from doing in-game challenges. That's a really good system. And then they added on top of this would be like, hey, here's an easy way or easy challenge things you can do that will give you special, very unique designed MTXs that you have to pay for. And I'm very happy with that. I think that's a really good way for a free-to-play game to monetize their content without it providing any extra power for people, because it's all visuals, right? And I think that's a really
EHG
cool
hasn't closed the book on battle passes during their Friday, because every single Friday, Mike, senior developer from EHG, does a dev stream. So literally every week, this Friday he'll probably be on, and he hasn't closed the books on battle passes. But you're right that he said that it'll always be cosmetics and it'll always be some kind of seasonal reward. It'll never be power. You're never going to see XP boosts. But knowing how EHG is, they do everything their way. So first off, it's not going to be probably called a battle pass. It'll be called like an Epoch something, and they'll probably put some crazy twist on it that ties into your faction or something. But yeah,
that's actually really cool. I wanted to mention that earlier. I forgot about the faction system allows them, or are presenting them with this unique opportunity with a really cool new system that they have with the faction system, which is great. It's innovative, it's new, it's refreshing, it's cool. Not everybody might like it. I'm a big fan of it, at least the iteration that they presented. But it also means, like you mentioned a little bit about it, like they are talking about making these seasonal events, which would allow them to potentially present branches of the faction. You know, you can specialize in something there, or you can choose a third faction all of a sudden, like, whoa, what's going on here? And have these seasonal events based around it. Sorry?
Yeah, it gives them customization where they can, every 3 months, if something doesn't work, they could throw something on the wall. And they've already said they want to obviously introduce more dungeons. There's a new endgame system that's going to be coming, and then factions are going to be coming. As far as the core game, they have 3 masteries, which will include 3 passive trees, and then 21 skills and factions. As far as like just core stuff, other than bugs and things like that. If that was in the game, technically, per what they have written down, the game's done. But of course, they're probably going to add in a lot more than that. But that is technically what's missing from it being 1.0 ready.
Yeah. And right now, when it comes to the monetization structures and whatnot, they have the availability to purchase supporter packs, which is what you did, right? For your unique chess piece you released, right?
Well, do you want me to tell that story? Do you want me to tell that story?
Share the story. We're all ears.
Oh, man. Well, for anybody out there that doesn't know, I have a new item that just dropped in 090. It's called Aaron's Will, and it is an Acolyte Minion armor, and it allows you to make more golems. So basically, Golemancer has come to last Epoch, and that was always my idea for it. And it was over a year ago. I was streaming for my Druid extravaganza, because on 084, they dropped the Druid, they remastered Druid, and it got some new transforms, and it got all updated, and it was really cool. And I streamed every day. And it was like, day 1, we're playing Werebear, then we're going to play Spriggan, then we're going to play Swarmblade, then we're going to play Multiform. And we're going to try and make a build each day, like just a starter build. And on the 4th day of that extravaganza, Judd, the game creator, was in stream, and we, had a few drinks and having some fun. It was the last day of it. And one of my community members, his name is Captain Neckbeard, literally hit a 6-team parlay in football betting. And he made like $8,000 or something like that. It was like a big hit. So he's gifting subs and he's donating, and we're all just having a blast. And when Judd came in, Captain Neckbeard was like, "Hey, Judd, how many subs would I have to gift Aaron for him to get his own unique in game?" And Judd said, "If you gifted another 50, I will give him a free pack." Gifted 50 subs, and Aaron's Will journey became. And that's literally how I got it. And that's why, if you look at my new unique item, I let Captain Neckbeard write the flavor text on it. And that's why it's signed CNB, Captain Neckbeard.
That's really nice. That's a fun story. Holy shit! Because the unique, I know that my community manager, one of my mods, he want to play that big time. So it's really cool, and I like the idea that it further develops the minion place in the game. And obviously, when it comes to minions, we're both big fans of it. I do have some problems with some of the AI issues, but I still think that the current iteration of minion control feels better than most other ARPGs I played, including Path of Exile. So it's like there's definitely some issues when it comes to like minion aggro, which is mostly noticeable when you have one minion, like an Archmage build, at least a range one that I've noticed. But I do like
they've made adjustments to melee minions. If you played melee minions, you might notice that they're a lot more aggressive. They used to be like when you move, they run back to you and then attack when you stop moving, which is like so agitating. Where now they're a lot more aggressive, so they'll like spread out and they'll clear screens for you. So that feels really good, but that was like the real only addition for 090. Other than that, like, yes, like going, like having one Archmage or one Golem or, you know, Wraiths only, or just a couple of Wraiths, you know, however you want to build it out, that playstyle, you can, by using multiple shades, which you know, you can make one minion extremely strong, but it's normally slower. And I don't think it's as fun. That's just my personal opinion. Like, I like Zoo style. When I played D2, I was Necro and I had a huge army. When I played PoE, my favorite build was always Skeleton Mages, and I would like vol it, and you'd have 100 of them. Like, for me, that was always my favorite. And coming to Last Epoch, it's the same thing. You could do one minion if you like that, but I like having an army.
I was looking through different minion builds, and I didn't want to go with a guide first, because first I played your Lazy Summoner build during the beta. Really nice, very effective to level with. I was not a big fan of the melee approach to it, but I feel like it would have been faster with a bit better gear and higher level, obviously, because it speeds up quite a lot. So when the 0.9 patch came out, I was like, you know what? I'm going to put my mind to it and see what I can do if I make something new. And the only thing that I found that wasn't updated or made a new guide for was an Archmage approach to it, and it was ranged. And god damn,
you made a cold one, right? It was cold?
Yes, it was a Cryomancer. And it was, goddamn, the damage was solid. It was so good, but it was all behind the Dread Shade. Like, Dread Shade did everything. If it didn't have Dread Shade, it wasn't gonna do damage.
Did you do double? Cool. Did you do double shades?
Yeah, with Infernal Shade as well. Yes. Yeah, but that was only for bosses, because of the risk of it dying if it wasn't hitting anything. But it was really fun. The problem with it, obviously, is I didn't have the teleporting with your minions, the convocation as I call it from the PoE terminology. So I didn't like the lack of that, because without that one, the AI issue was that if you ran to speed clear a map and your minion would have to catch up to you, and if there was a large amount of enemies between you and your skeleton, despite clicking the minion attack key, the minion would then not attack and would want to move close to you before attacking, which meant that you had to move back to it or vice versa before you start attacking. So you start tanking a lot of hits, which is why I went low life. And that solved being able to tank a lot of hits without investing too much.
Yeah, because you would be transplanting forward into enemies without your minion there to protect you. So low life helped keep you alive, correct?
Yes, and that was fine. The damage was solid, but obviously it doesn't pierce chain terminology for PoE again. So the clearing obviously only cleared whatever amount of projectiles you had. That's about minions or enemies you hit. But the damage was solid. It was very fun to play. So now I'm doing
and then you can't take. And then you're not going to take teleport with mage, because then you're just recasting your same mage over and over again.
And
so
you're going to need to put a Dread Shade on it, correct?
Yes.
So it basically, I could literally just transplant and then summon the minion manually instead, because it's one, and then put Dread Shade on it. That would be my way to move the minion forward more effectively. Which would also.
I was working on a 4 horseman build, and it failed, by the way. I wanted 3 golems and an archmage. That was my idea, because I have my armor, so I can easily do that. And basically, the archmage sits back and shoots, while the 3 golems tank and just suck up everything. But it just wasn't fast enough. I felt like I couldn't scale it to enough damage. So I need a little better gear, but I'm going to go back and try that again. Right now, I'm working on a support cold necro, so something you could take to friends. to try and keep them alive.
Bone Curse is crazy good for that. That like the Cryo Mage I did. The Bone Curse with applying armor shreds on hit and stuff like that and Mark for Death, it was so good for party play. Absolutely disgusting how effective that was just from party play, because they didn't need armor shred or anything like that. My curse would apply that and we would just surge down bosses. But you mentioned your chess piece again. I know someone told me that there were different versions of that chess piece before the final version that was introduced. So some versions that you guys were talking about, I'm assuming you had this conversation with
They
John.
had to nerf it.
They had to nerf it. Could you walk us through some of these iterations of the chess before the final version came out? Because I've only been hearing the rumors of it.
Yeah. So as you know Zizarin, of course, but Zizarin has Herald of the Scurry. It's his unique for last Epoch. It allows you to turn your wolves into squirrels. And he actually had a design stream. So he was actually live with the HG and they made that in real time. And I was like, I didn't take no for an answer. I was like, I'm doing a design stream for mine. I just bugged him over and over again, and it ended up happening. So me, Mike, and Nifty, the artist was drawing it in real time, and then me and Mike were discussing it, and we ended up building it live on stream. And then when it actually got created in game, it was too strong. It was I mean. And I don't want to put an item in game that's like, look at my item, it's totally broken, and then it gets nerfed, and then no one plays it. Like, that's not the idea of what I wanted. So the first kind of thoughts were +3 to maximum skeletons would give you a golem, which would allow you to have 5 maximum. So that was too strong, so they made it +4, so now you can only have a maximum of 4. And then basically Bone Shatter was way too strong. So like those guides you saw that are like single golem, you can get single golem up to, 400,000 or 500,000 DPS by basically ripping blood on top of them. So they had to put a note in it that said there's a 3-second cooldown for that skill, so it can't proc 100 times, which really does nerf that version of golem on my golem armor. But other than those two things, it's pretty much in its form it's been in.
Yeah, no, I've seen it in action. It looks really, really solid, and it looks fun to play. It really, really screams this is a Golemancer, especially with the new model they made for the golems. Like, I love the design of it, except the face, or whatever you want to call that. I don't know what it is.
The face that has faces?
It looks like Ed, Ed and Eddie, the wooden plank. That's basically how the face looks to me. I just can't get over it. Everything else, sexy as fuck.
And that's the stuff where, like, obviously I follow everything they post. They actually had a artist mock up 10 different versions of new golems. And they didn't like put it to a vote, but they put it out there that this is what we were thinking. And they have like, they have golems with like 6 legs and golems that are on all 4s. It looks like a bear. They've got all these different ones, and then they went with that version. And if you actually focus on the way it moves and attacks, it's basically a silverback gorilla. Just so you notice, it literally like gallops and then like jumps and stomps. That's basically what it is.
That's pretty cool. I didn't pay attention to that at all. That is pretty cool.
Yeah.
But you were working on a support cold deck right now. I'm currently doing a Ghost Maker dagger, because that's one of the new daggers I was told, right?
Yeah, that's new. That's a new item 4090, which I haven't I haven't had a chance to test it. I haven't gone that far yet.
It's cool. It's very interesting, actually.
Are you speccing into Infernal Shade or Wraiths? Like, you're trying to go fire damage, or you're trying to go minion damage?
We're going minion damage with it. So the Wraiths, what I wanted them to do is self-sustain them. But in party play, there was an issue with it. And that is obviously that this would happen on my Wraith killing blows. That would resummon these things. So in a party play, as soon as your party members start killing things, you ended up self-casting your stuff anyways. But since you can have so many minions and high attack speed, especially with the Infernal Shade and whatnot on the minions, they would apply such an insanely absurd amount of armor shred through this talent tree. So they work so well for bosses because of that approach. And with the leech nodes you can get from them and on the tree as well, and the skill tree, you're able to actually have them self-sustain, similar to the Cryo Mage self-sustain Infernal Shade. You could make the Wraiths self-sustain the Infernal Shades on single target, but the Ghost Maker dagger does nothing on single targets. So you'd have like a Soul Harvester axe in your backpack and weapon swap for the big in-game bosses. But I felt like even if you had to resummon your minions every now and then, it felt really comfortable. And I tried having so that my Infernal Shade would be targeted the enemies and then exploding, but the damage output from that felt really bad unless I'd actually scale it. And that didn't really feel good. So I decided to just make
And that's
them...
what's hard is that Infernal Shade scales with fire damage, not minion fire damage. So you can't technically scale both. You need to figure out which way you want to run it, which, of course, you picked the minion route. Go figure.
What can I say? I mean, I'm just saying. But
about right. My support build is focused on Frozen Eyes of the Formosus. It is a amulet, and what it does is every stack of chill, it could give you up to 300% minion freeze rate multiplier, which means each minion hit will add 900% to freeze rate. And you can run golems cold, and you can run mages cold, which just adds additional freeze rate. And then you could also get freeze rate from your gear and passives. So my idea is that since they nerfed Dreadshade, where Dreadshade no longer buffs you, which was broken too, by the way, so I understand why they nerfed it, I can support you by freezing everything, because if the enemies are frozen, now they're obviously not hitting you. So that's kind of been my idea behind it right now.
It's like a defensive support, and I'm guessing you have availability for Bone Curse, for Armor Shred, and stuff like that for boss support, I guess, as well.
So what I'm doing is I'm using double Inferno Shade right now with Golem and Skeleton Mages, and then that 5th skill, that's what I'm playing with right now. That's what I'm playing with right now. But since I don't have any temporary minions, I'm casting the Infernal Shades literally just on everything, and then I'm recasting them as I die, because it's really easy, because I don't have to maintain wraiths or zombies.
Fair.
That's I'm still playing with it.
I mean, it's a pretty cool way, because I mean, once you get to the higher end of corruption, I haven't really gotten that far. I'm sure you're way above me. My Cryomage build was handling 170, 180 corruption in without LP, with trash gear. That was easy, so I probably could have pushed it quite a lot higher. Current iteration of my Ghostmaker is doing the same content, but like I don't have any void or poison rest right now, so I need some rare gear to fix that, because I went from low life to having no gear pieces to solve the HP part, so I'm working on that.
That's what I really love about Last Epoch is the build will get you to Endgame, but if you want to stack corruption, you have to craft exalts, you have to have legendary potential. Like, that is where things will start to really move you forward when you get over 200 corruption. For me, I actually normally don't stack. Like, I don't get into the 300 or 400s, because normally I'm already onto another build. So right now I have to focus on leveling every single mastery so that I can make a build guide with the refreshed version of it for 090. Then once all my builds are up to date for 090, then I'll pick a few to see which ones I can push and see how high I can get them. So like right now it's all just testing and min-maxing and trying to figure out what works great together.
No, that's fair. So I mean, like, the higher the corruption you get to, the more pressure it is on certain aspects of the game, and you can have a very high clear speeding or very high AoE damaging kind of build, and normally the more damage you do, the squishier the build is by default, unless you get super big gearing, right? So having this defensive support could do very well for the sake of pushing higher corruptions in general. So I really like the idea of it. It's fun. It also incentivizes this whole party play approach, and it also doesn't mean that your build is incapable of performing, because I'm assuming you can get like minion freeze rate stuffs and these type of stats on your gear that would enhance the support aspect of the build, like you mentioned with the amulet. But at the same time, the same kind of build without needing to respec can have slightly different gear pieces, and suddenly your build's doing perfectly fine in solo gameplay.
And if you're playing solo, you're still tanking for yourself, so you're stronger. Now you might not kill as fast as like Fire Necro, but you'll still be able to kill everything. And you'll probably be more you're more tanky. So it's like, you know, I'll take that 10% reduction in clear speed, knowing that I could push higher content. And there's some people that are like, no, I have to go as fast as possible. And then, you know, there's the option for that.
Yeah,
there's the option for that.
I really like the approach to it.
I will say though, one thing that I wish, and this is something that they want to work on, is they never want a skill. Let's just take Dreadshade for example, to be like, I am required to have this. And right now that is kind of the case with Last Epoch. And Dreadshade's a great example, because if you're a minion player, like, could you imagine if you didn't have Dreadshade? You'd be
Well, to me, there's two things for Acolyte, well, Minion Acolyte players, and one of them is the Dread Shade because of how massive the buff is. Translating that to Path of Exile, it would be like playing a minion build without using an offering. It's just as crazy. Like, why would you do that? It's literally free damage. You will use that end of story, or you can go back to playing, Minecraft or something. But
Minecraft
the other
dungeons.
But the other ability is, in my opinion, I'm really annoyed that this is not in the transplant ability, and that is the convocation, the teleporting, bringing your minions with you. Because I feel like as soon as you're using a lot of minions, rather than one, even with one, it would be nice to have. You are heavily incentivized to spec into a certain area for the mage skeletons, which also heavily incentivizes you to use the Dread Shade as one ability. And you want to use Mage Skeleton ability as another ability because of that convocation approach, because of how effective it is for damage output, how effective it is for clearing, and all of those things, and also for defensive layers. When you teleport over somewhere, you're going to have your army with you, covering you. So that, to me, makes the Acolyte's current state of minion builds for Acolyte have two locked-in abilities, and you can only really choose from the other three, which limits build the design. So that's my little issue with the Acolyte minion builds at the current state of Last Epoch. Not sure if you agree with that.
Skeleton Mage tree. I love the Skeleton Mage tree. With the if Transplant did able to bring your army, that should be in there. I think that's a silly one, right? Because then it's like I can make super strong mages without having to waste 7 points and getting Grave Passage. That would be nice to open it up. I'll bubble that one up. I think that's one that could be easily added.
Yeah.
Have you played with Death Knights yet? Have you tried Death Knights yet?
The melee Mace Skellies?
Yeah,
I'm using them in my Ghostmaker build, actually, because I was forced into Mace Skelly skill because of the Grave Passage.
Hey, they look like pirates a little bit. They kind of look like pirates.
A little bit. I'll give you that. They're dual wielding, right? So it looks like they're using
lightsabers, actually.
Like burning or lightsaber scimitars ish. It kind of looks pretty cool.
Yep.
But the only reason I'm using them is because I'm forced into Grave Passage, because I want my wraiths to do the killing blows. But the only reason I did it was two things. One is Grave Passage. The other one is quantity of minion or hits on a boss, so that my armor shred would ramp up faster. But I would much rather have had ranged minions or anything else, just as high quantity of minions, because of the design of how it is. But I'm forced into Grave Passage to get that convocation ability for my wraith and the rest of my minions, which is kind of sad as well.
Are you... Across all ARPGs, do you prefer melee or ranged minions?
Ranged, always.
100%?
It has a lot to do with how ARPGs have a clear emphasis on clear speed, and melee minions needs to have a pretty obnoxious amount of speed and AoE damage output to be able to compete with ranged minions. Therefore ranged minions will, in pretty much any type of ARPG, always perform better on that end. I've also had the experience that in most ARPGs, the melee minions will perform better for single target boss fights. For the same reason, they'll do more damage to compensate their lack of their clearing efficiency. But ARPGs have always been the idea that you're rolling a roulette wheel to try to get better upgrades. You're doing the same thing over and over again, praying for a different result. It's the definition of insanity. Essentially, the faster you are clearing, the better you will perform in the ARPG genre, because of you're rolling the roulette wheel more times. A quantity of tries will then inevitably give you more loot for your time spent, which is kind of the idea of the RPG genre. And therefore, the range minions is, in many cases, always perceived as better. Then there are some other aspects to take into consideration, such as gap closers. If you have melee minions that have abilities or a way to gap close in PoE, we have Feeding Frenzy support for skeletons, giving them a dash ability. We have carrion golems having a leap attack. I believe the golem in Last Epoch has this jump and slam thingy, right? There's a couple of things that create these gap closers. But it's also really hard to balance, because they would need to put those things on a cooldown. Otherwise, they would do that 24/7, and suddenly they would outperform ranged minions by default. And you'd have the same problem on the other side of the
jumping zombies yet? Have you played with jumping zombies yet?
I've tried them. I'm not a big fan of the zombies, actually, because of the initial iteration that I played with them. They were basically just there as a bad excuse to help me sustain my EHP by regenerating my HP when they exploded, right? So I never liked the approach of that. But there's been some pretty cool things with the automation of summoning and whatnot from Infernal shit, is it?
Yeah, they can. Yeah, and they can cast skeletons, and they could give you ward. The zombie is one of the. I think it is the newest minion to Necro, and it's actually. I mean, just thematically, it's a pretty cool design. So it barfs on the enemy, and then once it's barfed out all of its life, so it has nothing left, it explodes.
Yeah.
That's pretty. You don't see that. You don't see that pretty often, and the visuals and the VFX look really, really good. I like zombies for two things. They have a kill threshold, which is great. You know, so they'll 16% kill threshold. They're the only minion that has that. And two, if you're going dot, whether it's like necrotic or fire, it could cast tons of dots. So you can like get up to 100 dots of fire or ignite just from your zombies. So those are two things. And I think they look cool. Like thematically, they look cool. And they could jump, and you can make them bigger.
Yeah. No, I think they're cool in that sense. I think that what I'll be doing next will probably be like a totem build, but if I go back to minions, it'll probably be something with the golems. Right now I'm focused on the wraith approach. Because many years ago, they had a race to first to level 85 race. And I won third place, I got third place in that race, where basically you got up to a certain level where you were going for the endless arena key back then. And that was the best way to get there. But you had to be careful so you didn't do it too early, because then the endless arena would get to the point where you would die. And that would slow you down. So you had to get to a certain level that you knew you could run X amount of waves to get to 85 without dying. But back then, I did a Wraith Summoner. And then we had so many Wraiths that you had to be careful so you didn't crash
unlimited.
your server. Yeah,
they
so you
were
had to
unlimited.
crash your clients. And I remember the last level was basically just a photo, what do you call it? Like just a presentation of still images. It's like, okay, you see here, I got 50 wraiths, so let's move to the next screen. You see here, I still have 50 screen, but I've moved half a yard. So it's really fun to do, but it's also
I used to do an unlock trick where you just auto cast them, and it's basically just like, I think you can get over 150 of them as long as you like spec into life leech and stuff like that. It was pretty crazy. And that was one they nerfed pretty quick, knowing that like, well, at some point we're gonna have multiplayer, and we know that's never gonna work. So it's, you know, it's mildly fine with single player, but we should just kind of nip that one in the butt.
Yeah, but they do have that issue right now with the quantity of things. Like, I'm playing mainly with a guy called Danon, and he's playing a Sentinel with a couple of auras. And auras applying to my minions is causing some heavy desyncing right now. But they also have another problem, and that is, I know I talked to EHG about this, and apparently this has been requested by a lot of people. He's from US West, and I am playing on European servers. The server that we end up on is not in between any of the US East, which would be fine, but rather the owner of the instance controls the area. So one of us has a good ping, and the other one plays on 160 plus ping, which causes even more desyncing.
I've got a lot of community members in Australia.
Yeah.
And you basically can't play with them. I mean, it just sucks, you know, because the ping is just so terrible. So it's like, it's better grouping experiences when you're local, when someone's at least in the same country as you. And they know that. And that is one of the problems. Also, as far as splitting up, I don't know if you've noticed this. So if you're on an echo and it's like, okay, you go up, I go down, we'll build up our stability faster. The server does not like that. It starts glitching out because there's too many assets moving at a single time, which then it can't keep up with it. So those are the two things that are driving me freaking crazy.
But it's like, it's the first iteration of multiplayer, so it's gonna be fun to see how they go from encountering these issues, being brand new, to encountering these problems, and how they're gonna solve it, and where we're gonna land when these quirks have been fine-tuned and tweaked, like server choices and all of those things, and the desyncing. Once this is sorted, I think that it's going to be great, and I hope that's going to be within the same time frame, if not sooner, than the faction system multiplayer, because when that gets released, it's going to be so fun to go through. And after that,
I know.
it's like just waiting for a full release and see where they go, because I'm very excited.
Well, the last three classes, or the last three masteries, Rune Master, Warlock, and Falconeer, they said will come at launch. They haven't said that that'll be cycle 1. So if anybody doesn't know, Last Epoch, PoE does leagues, Diablo does seasons. Last Epoch will do cycles. And just like anything else, the cycle will start. There'll be some endgame mechanic, and then everything switched to standard, and then we go from there. So for you, you're going to love Rogue, and you're going to love Falconeer, because that is going to be the quote-unquote minion class of rogues.
So Falconeer is going to be the minion class of rogues?
Kind of. And don't quote me, and EHG if you're watching, I'm sorry, because I don't know. This is all me theorizing, okay? But on a Friday live stream when Mike was live, I was like, I'm sad because I heard that Rogue wasn't going to be minion focused. And basically the response was, well, Rogue won't be only minion focused, but there will be minion elements in a nutshell. So it won't be like a necromancer, but the idea is like the ballista and that style of, sentry or ballista or however you want to look at it, crossbow, like that will be kind of the minion extension of Rogue.
Fair enough.
And you'll have a falcon. So literally it's going to be a class that won't be like any other class, because you'll have some kind of inherent ability with this bird that comes with you. And I don't know what the hell it's going to do. All I've seen is the art for it. It's freaking a huge falcon that sits with you. And they've already talked about how it's going to be like the number one MTX. Kind of you could turn it into a crow or a parrot or a bald eagle or whatever the hell you want. But yeah.
No, that sounds fun. I mean, I like that the different versions or variations of minion related stuff, because the thing is, I know some people are not a big fan of minion archetypes in ARPGs and are very salty towards the genre of it. But something to keep in mind is that a lot of the genre itself is so big thanks to Diablo from the good old days, and we have to acknowledge that. And based on that, there's a large player base there, or a large portion of the hardcore ARPG fans that basically love the minion playstyle and how it looks, the thematic of it. So not having minions in an ARPG, like that's a no-go for me. That's one of the main reasons I didn't like Lost Ark, for example. Didn't feel like a proper summoner. Whereas you have Diablo, or you have PoE or Last Epoch, for example, it just feels so good. And having different versions of it, because something Last Epoch has shown very well to the world is that they're very, very effective and good at creating new innovative ideas and creating their own thing. And it's just so cool to see. So it's gonna be fun to explore the different variations they have. They have the primalist approaches, they have the acolyte stuff with the necromancer, and then as you're talking about the falconeer being the minion archetype. We'll see how that goes as well. So it's gonna be very fun to
literally my
that.
community, and they're just joking around, I think, give me crap all the time, like, oh, you just let the AI play for you, you're not doing crap. Blah 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 blah. I know, I hear it all the time. And I'm always like, well, yeah, your shield rush is doing it all for you. I mean, you could just point to anything. But even though I've built 52 build guides and literally 6 of them are Necromancer, so it's not true. All right, I reject that. Now, that being said, if you like minions in Last Epoch, you have Necro, you have Beastmaster, you'll have Falconeer in the future. What else? You got Forge Guard. You might like Forge Guard. There's a lot of different. Each mastery will likely have some kind of minion class.
Now I'm actually looking forward to it. Something about minions, though, is scaling and stuff like that was rather interesting to go through, because to my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, totems still count as minions in the game, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
A totem is a minion.
And that to me sounded very weird. But that's coming from Path of Exile, where proxy damage sources such as minions, totems, traps, or mines, they're all counted as a reflection of yourself if they're not minions, whereas minions were separate entities. Your ability would create this ally, and that ally had its own stats that you scale. And in Last Epoch, it's different, because in PoE, totems, traps, and mines, they were extensions of yourself. So your stats would apply to them. Whereas in last Epoch, if you're summoning a totem, that's a minion. That's the minion stats doing that scaling, not stats from you, because it's not you casting their abilities. So it's very different from specifically PoE when you're comparing that. And I don't know, it's just hard well, not hard, but it's awkward to get used to, from my perspective at least, between the two. But what's your take on totems being considered minion? Would you rather see totem specific nodes, for example? Maybe that bloats item modifiers, perhaps, but I think I would rather see that.
EHG prides themselves on having tooltips that are ultra specific. So just small example, it'd be like, hey, Aaron, I found this blessing that gives ignite chance. Should I take it? And I was like, no, because that's your ignite chance. It has to say minion ignite chance for it to actually be for minions. Mm-hmm. And in Last Epoch, everything that does damage that is not coming from you is considered a minion, with the exception, and this is just off the top of my head, there might be other exceptions, but with the exception of like shadows. So like shadows do damage as a rogue, but you got to get like plus the shadow damage. Like you don't get minion damage for shadows. Mm-hmm. But I do think it makes it easier to understand, because, you know, if it was like totem damage and there is totem damage, there is minion damage, there's shared damage. But for me, I do think it should be unison across each skill. And that's kind of, I think that's where maybe it's like, you know, is it too easy because they're like dubbing it down so it's easy for people to understand? Should it be completely mastery specific where totems do their own thing compared to wraiths? I mean, I think that's a good conversation, but I do think it makes it thematically, it just makes it really easy to understand. A minion item for your Necromancer, if it's not class specific, you could take that off and put it on your Shaman, and it is going to buff your totems the exact same way. I guess that does sound a little weird, talking out loud and saying it.
I know, right? Like when you start looking at it and start designing a build around and stuff like that, you'd be like, oh, this is really good. My totems, I'm going to equip that item because it says minions gets this or that. I'm like, that does not compute logically. You know, the OCD stuff, you know, we talked about that with stash tabs. I have the same problem when it comes to understanding mechanics and whatnot. I like the oddly specific stuff. If minions does that, or you get that does not apply to minions because they're separate type of things. And suddenly that's great till you hit this point where it's like, yo, minion damage will scale your totem damage. Like, that's not specific. And
I will say, Undecember, Torchlight Infinite, like some of these other games that have come out recently do things very different, like as far as sentries and how like totems in Torchlight Infinite for the most part just buff you. They're like create auras and they support you. They're not like damage dealers. So it is different based upon game. I feel like Necromancer is the only one that's pretty close to it's probably the closest class like across ARPG genre. You have an army.
Yeah, you have an army. End of story. You know what's up.
Yeah.
You're the
Actually, I don't like the way D3. I don't like the way D3 did Necro. I didn't like the D3 Necro.
I played D3 for their last season. That was the first time I played Diablo 3 since 9 years. I never played Reaper of Souls because I was lured in by a friend who told me that minions were functional in Path of Exile. So I was like, yeah, I'll give it a try. Play it for a few weeks, got completely hooked, and realized minions were not functional in PoE at all. They were absolute dog shit. And I said, you know what? It feels better. I'm going to make this work. And that's the start of my career, basically. And it was fun. Yeah, it turned out well. But even when they introduced a Necromancer class in Diablo, I was like, I'm not going to play it. Fuck it. I can't be arsed to. But the last few weeks, I played a bit of Diablo 3, which was the first time I played D3 since 9 years-ish. And I started with the minion stuff, so I was like, yo, this is cool. And then, oh no, it felt wrong. It was clunky, it was awkward, it just felt bad. So I immediately changed into a Necromancer caster build, which was fun. I actually did have fun for a few days. Yeah. I think that if I kept playing, I would probably have enjoyed it for another week, maybe 2 weeks of playing the game and then get bored. But I did have fun, but it was not a minion build, not even close. I wouldn't even bother playing a minion build. But I was also told,
I had a good 20 people telling me I had to play Diablo 3 Season 28. It's like the conclusion because everything's going to be moving to D4. And I got close. Because I got a couple games that are basically like on the shelf. Like they're done. Unfortunately, PoE is one of those games. But D3 is one of the games that I haven't gone back to.
No, it's been a wild
Me
ride.
and PoE
for sure,
me and PoE have a rough relationship. I can't play that game anymore. I can't do it.
Really?
Can't bring myself to do it.
How so?
Well, I tell this story all the time, but basically I struggle with player-driven economies because I almost become obsessed with them. I get spreadsheets going and also start buying and selling. And it almost becomes like, I mean, it really does become like a spreadsheet simulator. Like the league's going, all I'm doing is buying and selling stuff and slowly improving my character through that instead of playing. And then, you know, this is like 4 years ago, but my wife's like, you don't even play the game anymore. Like, you don't even play the game. Like, it's so stupid. And I was like, yeah, but this is fun for me. And then I started realizing, is it really fun? Like what I'm doing, like checking all, you know, trying to find good deals and doing all this crap. And I played a lot. I played a lot of PoE. I almost played enough where it was like starting to hinder my relationship with my wife. And then I was like, well, you know what? I think it's time to move on. That's basically what happened. I have nothing against PoE. I love PoE. I still think it's king of the hill. I still think it can compete with D4 when we get PoE 2. But yeah, I moved on to other things.
Do you think...
I actually started covering more indie. So I went into like, you know, I went into Torchlight, which isn't indie. That was a bad first example. I played Chaos Bane. I played Inquisitor. I played Last Epoch. I played, like I said, Slormancer, Chronicon. Like I started playing a lot of other games.
Fair enough. You played Grim Dawn, I'm assuming, as well.
Of course, I played Grim Dawn.
Such a good game. Minions there is very similar to Last Epoch Minions in a lot of ways, which is probably why I really like both games that much as well.
Yeah, I think the sleeper for the future, when I mean future like 5 or 10 years, is when we get like a Grim Dawn 2. That's going to be one where people are going to just love that. I played a lot of Titan Quest.
Oh, yeah.
I played it. I feel like I've played literally everything that's at least isometric. I got into The Witcher 3 for a long time. That game's awesome, you know.
I mean, everyone has like their old school games they played a long time ago. They're like, it's just hits right. Like for me, it's World of Warcraft. It's such a bad game, but it's so fun. It's like I'm playing Classic in Wrath of the Lich King right now, and I have my Tuesday raids. It is such a bad game, so horrible, so bad, but it's so fun. I sit there every fucking Tuesday night. I'm like, I'm having the time of my life. These 4 or 5 hours. I love it. Granted. Like, so good. First a 25-man raid, then into a 10-man raid, and like, yeah, now I can go to bed happy, tired as fuck, exhausted, but I had a good time.
Yep.
But then you realize the game is so bad. But you played it, so you have a lot of nostalgic value behind it, right? But so I think definitely like Grim Dawn has definitely something that's coming up as well. But you mentioned Diablo 4 and the competitiveness between PoE and D4 with the recent, the expected releases that we're seeing coming soon. Do you think that Diablo 4 will actually be competing with the hardcore ARPG fan base though?
Oh man, now this coffee chat, we're gonna get going. Every time I talk D4, I normally get myself in trouble. So I apologize, everybody. I think D4 will break every record when it comes to sales. I think D4 is one of the few genres that can cross every generation when it comes to age. And when it comes to the first-person shooters, you know, they're going to love and want to play D3. My 17-year-old son who plays Dead by Daylight and Overwatch and Halo wants to play D4. You know, there's no other game, at least PC gaming, that I've grown up with that I feel like from the 12-year-old to the 90-year-old, they will want to play D3 or D4. So, in saying that, I plan on playing it. I plan on streaming it. I plan on maybe even making a build guide here or there. And of course, I'm going to play Necromancer. But it's not going to feel like a classic ARPG. It won't. I'm more happy with the last dev chat that they've done talking about how the game is going to handle like the online, like how the town hubs are going to work and how you're going to interact with people in the world and how the dungeons and the raids and the world bosses are going to work. They answered a lot of questions for me. I am just terrified that it's going to feel like Lost Ark and it's not going to feel like PoE because it's got mounts and it's got open world aspects to it and it's got boss fights and it's got all the daily login crap and it's got the free battle pass and the paid battle pass and it's got all that other stuff. So I am saving my conclusions on D4 until I get to play it. But I'm not super confident. Okay, I've said it.
That's
there
fair,
you go.
That's fair. I don't think that, like, I think that I agree with a lot of what you said, though, personally. I think Diablo 4 will... It's not a matter... It's not a question if Diablo 4 is going to be successful or not. I think it's very clear that it's going to be successful. But
it's probably sold 10 million copies already.
It wouldn't surprise me, I'll be honest. But it's like, I think that one needs to realize that there are three major categories of player bases it's targeting. One is the MMO player base, the other one is MMORPG, and then it's the RPG. ARPG, of course. The MMO ARPG and the MMO and the ARPG. There's an A before, sorry. And I think that it's not a matter if they're going to be successful or not, but it's also pretty clear to me that they are not looking to compete with the niche ARPG hardcore fan base. To me, it feels more like they're looking to take the market shares off Lost Ark, which feels more like they're going to, because the game is an MMO ARPG, but they're basically deciding it's to compete with that kind of market and the market shares from that. So I'm very confident that I think that a lot of people in the ARPG hardcore fan base will not be very happy with the product that they're going to release, but that's not going to make them not succeed, because I'm very confident that them being successful or not is already a given.
And all those people that aren't going to be happy with it will buy the game. They will.
Yeah, there's that as well.
They're still going to buy it.
At least the vast majority will still buy it to play it.
I think a vast majority. If I had to pick one thing that they shouldn't have done, is they should not have introduced mounts. I know why they did it. I understand the reasoning behind it, because they want to sell you saddles and undead horses and all this other crap. But the second you introduce mounts into an ARPG, it's going to feel like an MMO. It's just, in ARPGs, you use movement skills, you use your gear, you use waypoints, you use town portals. You don't need mounts. And I just feel like I can't get over that at this point.
But I mean,
I'm struggling to get over it.
It is promoted as an MMO ARPG, and even Lost Ark has mounts that I would like to recall, right?
Yeah, but Lost Ark, you know, in my opinion, Lost Ark is an MMO that looks like, because it's isometric, a Diablo-like. In my opinion, Lost Ark is literally a full-blown MMO, because you see people in the world, there's nothing instanced, like, you've got all the dungeons and raids and the town hubs. Like, to me, Lost Ark is New World and Lost Ark, to me, they look different, but they are the exact same.
I mean, that's fair, but then again, it's like I mentioned before, like, to me, it's very clear that Diablo 4 is looking to compete with that type of market, which means that they will be designing an MMO emphasis on MMO ARPG game. So it is an ARPG because it's within the Diablo franchise, the Sanctuary world, and then they're just going to make it focus on the MMO aspect because of the longevity of it, and the current market in the industry is clearly showing that people want an MMO ARPG game. That's why Lost Ark, one of the reasons Lost Ark got so big in the Westworld release as well. And
obviously I know that I come across as like, oh, you know, it's like a D4 hater. I'm not a D4 hater. I literally built my YouTube channel because of Diablo 2. You know, it's my favorite game. And I literally have on my shelf here, oh, you can kind of see it, I got the D3 collector's box. Yeah. Anyways, I'm going to play D4. I'm hoping it's great. I'm hoping it's going to be a game changer. I'm just not sold until I play it. I got to play it. And I've been covering their development updates quarterly on YouTube for years. And I covered BlizzCons and feel like I'm pretty up to date. Blizzard hit me with a damn strike on my YouTube channel for posting leaked content. Bastards. But anyways, I'm going to play it. I'm hoping it's going to be good. I just hope it feels like an action RPG.
Yeah.
I hope it feels like a Diablo game.
Yeah, I think that most of the people within the ARPG hardcore fan base, we're hoping that's going to be the case. So we'll see what happens, obviously.
Do you think PoE 2 can compete with D4 player wise?
D2 and D4?
Can PoE 2 compete with the player count of D4?
Oh, I don't know. It's impossible to tell, I think. Because I think that Diablo 4 is targeting an audience that is so much bigger than the hardcore ARPG fan base and people that are interested in that. I firmly believe that PoE 2, because of how it's marketed, essentially isn't a new game. It's just a huge expansion with the core changes in it, with a different way of a secondary option for going through the campaign. But because of how it's marketed, it will be perceived as a new game, which will bring back the people that didn't like PoE 1 to give it a try again. So it's definitely going to have a huge spike of player base. But even so, I still don't think that PoE 2 is catering towards or attracting or trying to steal market shares in the industry towards a player base that is bigger or even equivalent to the size of the player base that Diablo 4 is targeting, and therefore I don't think that's going to happen. No. Do I think that PoE 2 will be better? Yeah, I'm pretty confident in that, but that's also because I am a hardcore ARPG player.
Of course.
And Diablo 4 is not targeting me and my player base, so to say, that I belong to. So I mean, there's
if I went back to PoE, to play PoE 2, would I still have to play the PoE 1 campaign?
You choose between them, so your class decision will tell you which campaign you're playing, to my understanding.
Okay.
So you get to choose.
I don't think I could ever play the PoE campaign again. I don't know if I could. I don't know if I could do it. I can't believe, why have they never put in a skip for that? Or maybe there is now. It's been years since I played.
No,
you still can't?
You can get better at the game and make that time frame shorter.
That's fine. Is that like one of like GGG's like staples? Like, we are never like, this is just something, that's how it's going to be. They never want to have a campaign skip.
Well, there's been events where there's been other choices, but no, there isn't a campaign skip in that sense, no. And they've been pretty clear that they're not looking to do that. They have a tendency of not providing a lot of quality of life features, and then whenever they do release a quality of life edition, then people are celebrating it, even though the quality of life edition that they've just provided us is something that, arguably should have been in the game since ages ago. So it's a bit hard to balance, I guess.
It does feel like PoE, GGG, when they make a decision, it feels like half the people are happy, half the people are pissed. I don't know if they can ever win. I don't know if you agree with that or not. I know the last two leagues supposedly were really, really good. The last two leagues were really good.
People are never going to be satisfied, and especially with volatile topics, but enjoying certain leagues. I'd say that the Sanctum League was a great league. I think it's one of the better leagues that they've ever had. Despite that, I didn't play that much for a variety of reasons. My mental health was one. But towards the end of the league, I was more interested in trying out the Torchlight stuff, more interested in Last Epoch right now. There's events happening in PoE right now. I am just not interested enough in playing the Ruthless with Gold event, so I would rather invest my time in Last Epoch, which is why the subathon starting today with this stream actually is going to be played almost exclusively in Last Epoch. And if it lasts throughout the weekend, I'll play Diablo 4, but I will be spending my time playing Last Epoch because I'm having more fun and more interest in that. But I mean, when it comes to like volatile topics such as, the Harvest nerfs, for example, is something that can be brought into the choices Last Epoch's done with the trading changes that they have with the faction. When it comes to these things, whether you like it or not, there are some topics, such as if you're enjoying the league or not, you can ask 1,000 people, you'll get 500 different opinions, all of which might be really good, but neither of the choices or the decisions or opinions would cater to the majority of the player base. So they could choose the best solution ever, but that is not going to be a good solution according to the majority of the player base. And that's why I was so surprised with what Last Epoch did with that decision, with trading specifically, because I feel like that is somehow magically finding a middle ground that would please both sides of the spectrums of the extremes.
No, you're spot on. So when they announced no trade, I'm going to say 90-10, 90% pissed. And you've got people that have covered the game for years saying, like, I'm done. I'm not going to play LE for the rest of my life, knowing that I'm never going to be able to trade with friends. Like, done. And then with the announcement of the faction system, I would say the polar opposite. 90% of people were like blown away, happy, and the other 10% are like, like it's hard to please everybody. Yeah. But it's cool when you see, some of the juggernauts, in the industry, like the Rikers, right? Rikers making a video like Diablo needs to do this, and it's a video on Last Epoch's faction system.
Yeah,
you can love or hate Riker, like, it's your point, but like that is like, for him to make that video, That's pretty cool. And you see that kind of across the industry is a lot of people have taken notice with what 11th Hour Games is doing and how they're taking and creating Last Epoch. And I think you brought up a good point is that, yes, it feels fresh because you play so much PoE and now you're playing Last Epoch, but it's fun. When people always talk to me about Last Epoch, it's like, why do you play it so much? And I give all the same reasons. I think crafting's good. I think stash tab's good. I like the skill system. I feel like it's a fun game, but but that's really it. It's hard to quantify having a good time. It is just a fun game to play and trying to figure out builds and like you could turn your friggin' wolves into squirrels and you can go storm totems, or you could be a sword and board monster, or you could throw axes through your spin to win. I mean, there's so much to it, but it's not overly difficult where you feel like you're totally lost, And that's what I love. It's fun. It's fun.
I think that like looking at games in a as objective scope as possible is good when you're looking at mechanics and stuff like that. And I think you brought up Riker, and I'm a big fan of Riker. I think he's a really good guy. Met him at Exile in the first round as well. Became friends after that. It's just I really like Riker as a person as well. As very down to earth. Something he's really good at is looking at things very objectively. So when he's talking about these things, like you mentioned, Diablo should do this, and be like, bam, showing Last Epoch. It's because of that objective perspective, which I think is a very hard. I'm not sure how you feel about that, but I have a very hard time achieving that state of objective, non-biased approach because I am biased towards Path of Exile being my main game for the past 9 years, So it's very hard to put on those neutral glasses and be like, yo, let's take a look at this. Okay, I mean, that's good. In my case, if we're coming from PoE, that is terrible in PoE. That's shit. And then playing Last Epoch, I'd be like, yeah, this would be amazing if that was in PoE. But that comes to this whole thing where the genre that is so, don't want to use the word dated, but aged very well in some categories. It comes to the point where there's no reason to reinvent the wheel, but creating innovative solutions such as the faction system is so cool to see that still being able to be done in this genre in that way and scope. At the same time as taking inspiration from competitive games within the same genre and also outside of it, such as the last league in PoE was a roguelike approach. I personally wasn't too fond of going ham in that type of content myself, so I didn't actually spend too much time in the actual league mechanic. I still found it very interesting and fun because it allowed people that did like it to devote so much time into it, and I liked that approach to it, even if I myself wasn't personally overly fond of it. And that's something that
almost got me back into PoE because I love rogues. And I was so close. I was like, I just want to log in and maybe I'll try it, get a little dopamine hit, and then decided not to. It's like, no. I'll just keep playing Hades or something like that. But I love rogues.
Yeah, so I mean, it's like this idea, like the game is taking, the company's taking in inspiration from non-ARPG games as well to create this ARPG experience that is new, refreshing, and it's coming with these seasons every 3 months. And it's going to be very exciting to see how that's going to develop, because we saw Torchlight Infinite also releasing seasonal releases, and they are going to have a new release coming soon as well. We have Last Epoch, who's looking to do seasons. We have Diablo 4 coming around the corner. So being an ARPG player, someone who is a hardcore ARPG fan, right now is the best time to be alive. People talk about the great 80s, how it was back in the 70s. Fuck that. 2020, that's the era you want to live in right now, okay? Because if you're an ARPG fan, there's so many options around the corner. It's going to be very fun to see how that develops for our type of player base, if you will. And because if one game is successful to another compared to others, it will still make the genre thrive, because they're going to take inspiration from one another. So whichever category, wherever you land.
I'm pulling up something right now.
Yep.
I made a video. So many damn videos. I can't find anything. On March. On just the craziest ARPG month I think I've ever seen. D4 playtest, Last Epoch multiplayer, Torchlight Infinite Season 3, Superfuse dropped a new update. That game continues to get better. Wolcen Chapter 4, and the PoE leagues. That was just off the top of my head. That's just March.
Yeah.
That doesn't even show what else is coming into the future, because you have games like Undecember just did a big update. You have Warhammer Inquisitor Martyr that drops leagues now and seasons. You have Grim Dawn that does community run stuff. There is so many options when it comes to action RPGs that I agree. I keep saying over and over again, like, this is the year of ARPG. Like, this is the year of that genre where it's really going to break into even more mainstream that it's already been in. And obviously D4 is kind of like, you know, that launching point, because again, I think it can cross every single genre. But I agree with what you're saying. It's a great year to be a fan of the genre.
Oh, for sure. It's gonna be fun because I think that no matter if you are a fan of any of the games or if you're a hardcore fan of one of them, it doesn't matter, because if one of them thrives, all of them will grow from it. The genre will grow, and the inspiration that each game takes from one another is just very fun to go through. So it's very exciting, especially during this year with the Diablo 4 being one of the bigger releases. PoE 2 beta will be announced at ExileCon 2 in July. So there's sorry, I apologize. Too much
fine. It makes me, it's interesting that you talked about Torchlight for a second. I bet you loved Moto and Torchlight because, actually no you didn't, because these they're melee minions. Actually no, you can have shooters too. That's an example of minions that can close the gap. They're so damn fast. I don't know if you played that build.
I did. I played Spider Tanks. It was fun. And then once you reach 1 billion DPS, it was like, I'm done. It was a fun game. Short-lived in terms of longevity. Very like Diablo for me in terms of enjoyability. Obviously, Torchlight have some other issues such as very little after the change. Very little pay to win, but there is a little bit of it. But the biggest problem is that their non-pay-to-win stuff is still locked behind gacha system. That's my biggest issue with Torchlight. Other than that, fun game. Can have fun with it. You don't have to. You don't have to spend money to enjoy it. And in the sense, the only multiplayer interaction is essentially trading, which you don't really need to do. It really didn't feel bad, and I didn't really have that much of an issue with the very tiny pay-to-win edition.
I feel like that's going to be an up-and-comer that people aren't going to see coming. I think that game is going to have a long, good career in the genre, because they are going to be dropping co-op. I think it's going to be season 4, and they are really good marketers, and they are dropping content pretty quickly. The game to me actually feels like OG PoE, like so fast, like you're just screen clearing and you're running maps in 20 seconds, you know, which I guess you could still do in PoE, but like,
yeah, I guess. No,
it's been slowed down.
I agree with you for sure. I think that no matter what people have with opinions with the gacha system and whatnot, people still play Lost Ark, and Lost Ark is, there's pay-to-win features in Lost Ark. So to say that a game will fail because of pay-to-win, I don't think that's the case. That's pretty clear. I think that Torchlight is definitely going to be I'm not sure if I want to say a proper contender to the hardcore ARPG fan base, but we also have to keep in mind that the large portion of the hardcore fan base of ARPG is not the hardcore players, even if they're hardcore fans. It is the casual players that makes up the majority of the player base. And those people will have a very easy time playing things like Diablo 3 or Torchlight Infinite, for example, and very likely Diablo 4 as well, if they go with that same approach where it's very friendly towards those type of players, because they do make up for the majority of that player base. Definitely
Torchlight normally gets a bad rap because obviously it's got a mobile port. So like people are like, oh, it's just mobile trash, and then it's got a gacha system. So I totally understand that sentiment from like, I don't know why you waste your time on it, but I just always, again, think that it's fun. It's concurrent top player base for Torchlight Infinite is 21,000 players, but that's only tracked through Steam, not mobile. So I'm not sure what I don't know if that number is 10 times higher or what's up?
Don't they have a standalone client as well?
They do have a standalone client as well. So that's 21,000 just through Steam.
Yeah. So, I mean, but again, I think that, like you said, I think it is one of those games that people seem to be forgetting that is in the background. They had a really good, successful launch in the last season, which I do agree that is completely catered to their marketing team. Especially with how they did with streamers. I was part of one of those rounds where they had a race. It was Mr. Llama, Diaz Lily, me, someone, Diaz Lily was there as well. We had this race to Traveler 6 boss. It was cool. It was really cool. It was fun and very enjoyable.
Lily won, right?
Sorry?
Didn't Lily win?
Oh, she demolished the competition.
Yeah, you guys got smoked, I think. Or
yeah. She was done when I went to bed for the first after the first stream session. So I mean, it was pretty gnarly actually. But it was fun. It was real fun, and I really hope that Torchlight will take the opportunity and the success of those type of marketing. Obviously, from a streamer's perspective, it would be nice to do another sponsorship with them. But I definitely think that is a good way to get attention to the game, and I did enjoy it. And even after the sponsorship was over, I played a lot because the sponsorship for me got me into the game, and that was like, yo, I'm having a lot of fun with this. I'm gonna keep playing after the sponsorship was over. And I think that's a good way to show that, hey, we have a product that people are enjoying. So it was really fun. So I hope that they continue with that. So it's gonna be fun to see what they do with their next season then.
Thinking about last Epoch, you've played Torchlight, you're a master of PoE, played Diablo, you've been everywhere in the genre. What do you think last Epoch needs?
Better minion control, but I'm extremely biased.
What more generic grand systems do you think it needs?
I think that last Epoch has so far, every time they've released new content, has been like, yo, this is so good. In general, for me, when it comes to last Epoch, that I would like to see, outside of the mechanical stuff, is essentially a way to respec your mastery choice. I think that's a big one. It's really frustrating. I know it's not that slow to level your character with some items that you dropped. There's a lot of leveling uniques, but I don't see why you wouldn't be able to respec your ascendancy. And outside of that, I feel like content-wise, I think they've done really well, and the faction system opens up the availability for more echoes, different type of echoes. What do you call it? Not, it's monoliths, right? The general zones.
Monoliths, yeah.
Yeah, so like new monoliths would be an easy way to introduce different types of content and stuff like that. So I mean, there's so much they can do.
So right now they have monoliths, they have 3 dungeons, and then they've got arena bosses and endless arena. Do you think they need another end game system?
I don't think that they need it. I think that they've set themselves up to allow them to develop it without that being too much work to come up with a cool idea. And that's why
I'll
very
rephrase.
happy.
Do you think they should add to the existing systems instead of create an entirely another system?
I think they should fine tune what they have right now before adding new. Yes. But again, I think that the best way they can do that is through the faction system, because of how extremely well thought through that system actually is. From my perspective, without actually having it play tested, by the first iteration that they promoted is so cool. And developing that one could very well be a step into another type of endgame system. But fine tuning what they have now is so cool, and I really like to see that, personally.
I always think about, I think about how people always say that PoE is like bloated. It's like there's so much to do. You could spend forever and not complete it all. And I always wonder if Last Epoch should take the route of every cycle mechanic becomes core. Do you think that's smart, or is it like only keep the core that's good, or the ones that hit well? I know that there's a hard time, Do you think it should stay?
How do you mean with stay?
So let's say cycle 1, Last Epoch 1.0, they introduce, I don't know, the Monolith of Fate 2.0 or they introduce some kind of mechanic, like the roguelike. Like PoE introduced like the roguelike. Should that mechanic inside of the ARPG stay as a core for the next season?
I think that, and I believe Last Epoch, being PoE players as well, will be a little careful with that, because I personally feel like PoE is in a position where it is very bloated, and if you've been through the 9 years of content with them, adding new stuff is easy to apply, but it's very detrimental to the newer player base. So I don't mind. I would rather see things being kept, so that the time investment and the money spent and the dev time to create something is not going to be just for 3 months or whatever the time frame they choose and then be discarded. I think it would be wise to keep it, but also cap how much they're keeping, and then basically rotate the things. That's a way that I think would be a good way to have max amount of mechanics, if you will, or endgame systems that they're keeping between the seasons, and then having them rotate would be a thing. But then again, some people loved X mechanic, and then X is not with in the next season. That's, you know, so I don't know how.
And that's what EHA says. It's easy to add things. It's really hard to take them away, because the second you take it away, it's become the standard for some player base, and then people get upset.
No, for sure, for sure. What's your take on that specific topic?
Well, I like actually what Torchlight does. They add a seasonal mechanic, then it's a completely new end game run. The old season is still in game, but in a limited form, so you could still do that. And then every season it rotates down. So it's like, if you like the old season, you could still do it, but there's this new thing. And then it just slowly, kind of like you said, filters its way out. So basically you get to play that seasonal mechanic for 2 seasons before it is gone. I think that's a smart way, so that it doesn't, like, you know, you fall in love with 2 seasons, that could be a half a year of content, but it gives you an idea where you're not stuck and bored in that same content, so you could filter through it. What EHG wants to do is they want to add a lot of randomness. And Mike, again, on one of his Friday podcasts, used the example of, you're running an Echo in the Monolith, and you come across a hut, and in the hut, some guy runs out with an axe and tries to kill you. And then you realize he's a good guy. And then that guy takes you on a mission where you go do something to gain something and help them out. Like, or the monolith turns dark. And that's because, you know, every 500 times a special thing pops up. Like, they really want to add a level of randomness. Or instead of running towards the objective, you go the opposite way. And by going the opposite way, you uncovered a secret passage that takes you somewhere. But yeah, like, that's, I know that EHG really wants to add in those types of mechanics.
Yeah, now it's gonna be real fun with to see where they go. It's like we mentioned before, the last Epoch has shown very clearly how effective they are on creating new cool approaches to the game, such as the faction system. I'm so sold on it, it's crazy. They reached out to me and were like, yo, do you got any feedback on this? And I looked at it, I'm like, yo, this is, here, go for it. Fire. This is good. I don't have any objections, anything. This is sweet. So it's gonna be fun to see how they do with other types, such as this topic you're bringing up as well. I see,
you know, the first iteration. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I see we're closing in on about 2 hours in. I think that, do you have the stream chat open right now?
Me?
Yeah. So I think that we can start rounding off, and then we can take some chat questions, perhaps. If you guys have any questions, chat, just fire up and see if there's anything you guys want us to tackle. Sorry, I interrupted you. What were you saying?
I was going to say, the first iteration of the Bazaar, people don't know this, they wanted to create a D2 trade system. So, you know, D2, you would enter a trade room, you'd put up your crap, they put up their crap, and then you would try and trade, you know, that way. The first iteration of the Bazaar they wanted to put in was rotating shops, and you would go to that shopkeeper and click on it and see what people had for sale. Then you sell MTX to, like, make your shop look good, almost like your hideout in PoE. Yeah. And I always thought that was, like, a really kind of cool. It's like, oh, for the stream, let's go cruise the Bazaar and see what's for sale. A lot of people don't know that, but that was the first iteration.
I wasn't too fond of that myself, but, you know, it's like, I didn't bother it too much or think about it because of the target farmable capabilities that you're presented in last Epoch, which is very unlike many other ARPGs. You want a specific item, you are able to target farm that to some degree. It's not deterministic, but it increases your probability. If you stay here, you will eventually get it because you're targeting that. And some of the items are gated behind bosses, so that's another thing. Like, some items are 50-50, some is like a random drop from the boss. You keep farming that area, you're gonna get it eventually. It's just grinding it out. But if you do another area, you're never gonna see that item. So there's
the new Bazaar is, you go to the, like, boots NPC and you click on that, and you could search all the boots for sale in the game. So now that's the new one. Hey, Aaron, you said about mounts in D4, but have you ever played Sacred or Sacred 2? They had a huge open world ARPG, and it was really good in mount mechanics. I hope D4 does that the way instead. I have, and in that game, yes, it was really, really good. I guess I'm just scared based upon recent Diablo Immortal released that mounts are in the game, not for that reason, but just to sell crap. But that being said, I've heard that mounts are needed because the worlds are so large that you need to be able to traverse them that way. And then my argument is always, well, you could just use a waypoint. But I don't know. I haven't played it yet.
But then again, I mean, say we get Diablo 4 early access Necromancer, and we're like, yo, this is so cool, and they're gonna sell us a skeletal horse. I shit you not, I will buy that within 10 minutes. I already know I'm going to.
I think they already have a skeletal horse. It's already there.
All right, I'm gonna prepare my wallet. Like, it's done. I'm already done. Like, it's sold. I don't even know how it looks. I'm gonna buy it if it fits my minion army build that I want to do. I'm done. I'm buying it, and they're gonna make money out of players like me. So
hey, I had an idea. Listen to this for just a second. I pitched this. That could you imagine if you had like skeletons or your army, and then when you went and made your mount, the skeletons constructed the horse, and then you got on it. And then when you dismounted, your horse breaks apart into the army. That would be freaking awesome. That was my idea.
I hope D4 devs are watching this stream right now. It's so cool, yeah.
Wouldn't that be so cool?
It would really be cool, yeah. I mean, it's small things like that that makes games cool. So yeah, no, yes. Absolutely. Question for you again, Aaron. When can we expect a sick-ass crossover stream event with some nasty collab Minion build?
Whenever Ghazzy's ready. He's got a baby coming.
The baby's the problem here. Let's just chill, boys. But yeah, I'm down. I'm definitely
you know what's
down.
Gonna happen? You're gonna have the baby carrier.
Oh yeah.
You're gonna have the baby. You're gonna be streaming with the baby. That's what's gonna end up happening. That's gonna be what.
That's preliminary planned already. That's basically how I'm gonna work. I already told my fiance. I'm like, yo, I'm gonna get one of those so I can work.
I saw the question on Black Desert Online. You ever play Black Desert Online?
I have. Great game. Not very stream friendly, sadly, because the game is great. It's outside of the pay to win. But
yes. I'm excited more for Crimson Desert, which is coming out. I'm gonna play some Crimson Desert.
Not heard about that. It's the same thing, same devs, or?
It's like the next. I think it's Crimson. Now you're making me second guess myself. Yeah, Crimson Desert. That's the next iteration of Black Desert.
Coming out in 2024. Oh.
Crimson sounds heavy pay to win though.
Well, Black Desert is that as well. So I mean,
yeah, exactly.
I like the game, like the graphics to it. It was so cool. So it's a shame it wasn't stream friendly and the pay to win but broke it because the game was so cool. I really like the way they had it. It's kind of groundbreaking, but you know. Ghazzy making his own minion army, first minion on the way. I mean, Aaron's ahead of me right now. He's got 4. Jesus.
I've already got 4.
Have you been using them for flesh-like farm bots?
No, I should though. On stream the other day, I got up to eat for a little bit. My 7-year-old jumped on stream in front of 300 people and beat an arena echo. And then everyone's like, see, your minions are broken. Even your 7-year-old can win with the AI.
I mean, to be fair though, I mean, a 7-year-old having a parent as a minion overlord in the last Epoch, it's like, yeah, no, it's just built different.
She's built for it.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Any other chat questions? Barbarian summon his mount. He steals a random horse from a traveler.
Right.
I mean, there's so many cool quirks people can do, what devs can do in games that just enhances the enjoyment. I don't remember which game it was. There was like this rare reload animation on some game, which was super, super rare. When you reloaded your weapon, instead of picking a mag out of your vest, a random arm would show up from your side of the screen to hand the mag to you, and you would take that and load your weapon. I don't remember which game that was. Like small stuff like that is very enjoyable.
But it adds to it, right?
Yeah,
it adds to it for sure.
No, absolutely. Battlefield 4 Hardline. Yeah, there we go. 3 or 4. Yeah, I think so.
Still not as cool as the skeleton horse. Still not as cool as the skeleton horse.
That's true. I mean, we're kind of biased here, but you got it.
Could you imagine though, if like, let's say you had wraiths? I don't remember the minions in D4, but like whatever the minions were that constructed your horse, the horse looked different. Like you could see it in there. I don't know. I'm really on this kick. So
yeah, no, I think it's a really cool idea.
Lady Medusa says, when will you win your armor race? Action RPG. I tried. I tried. My race is still going. The first one to turn it into a legendary that gets +1 to skeletons transferred over. I didn't get +1 to skeletons to transfer over. That's the race we're doing.
That's a cool race. I mean, all right.
Yeah. One person has done it, and they didn't enter the race. So we have 139 in there.
Okay. That's a fun race. Should probably get on.
My races are really treasure hunts. I think it's more fun than like the person that plays for 24 hours and wins. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. Definitely see that. Do you think D4 will be more MMO like Lost Ark or more traditional ARPG? Which one do you want it to be? Oh, I would love a D4 to be an ARPG, but it's not. It's going to be an MMO ARPG, and it's very clear to me that they're looking to compete and take market shares from Lost Ark, which means that they're going to heavily emphasize on the MMO structure of it. Now, I'm one of those players that would love to see a successful, well-designed MMO ARPG as well, so I really hope the D4 will be successful on that department, but it's also going to attract a very different player base compared to the hardcore ARPG genre, or that type of players. Do either of you think that some of the success of these ARPGs come due to the negative press Activision Blizzard has generated with the mistreatment of their employees? I'll let you answer that one.
Oh, thanks for that one. I appreciate you transferring that over. I think that Blizzard as a company is not even a shadow of its former self. And what I mean is, of course, Blizzard North. Blizzard North is, like #1, A+, best there is, best there ever will be when it comes to a studio. They would say it takes 10 years to design a game, and that game, when you buy it from the box, will never need anything, and it'll be good. You look at StarCraft, you look at Warcraft, you look at Diablo, like they have done more for the industry of gaming than probably any studio there is. And I think that the negative publicity and the way they treat their people and the stances they take are not good. And I think there's only one game that people will not care, and that's Diablo. I still think the game's huge. I think it won't, like, people will be like, yeah, I don't agree with whatever they say, but it's a Diablo game, so I have to buy it. So,
I mean, that's fair. That's fair. Brevik, one of the Blizzard North founders, is actually working as a consultant for Torchlight Infinite, which is one of the main reasons why I was very curious about the game. Yeah. I believe I met him at ExileCon on the first one. But I
got a quick question on Aaron. How do you make more golems without speccing into skeleton tree? You need 2 hollow fingers. So if you use 2 hollow fingers plus the 2 from the passive tree, you could make 8, but you're giving up both of your ring slots. But if you use 2 hollow fingers and spec into skeletons and get +1 to skeleton to transfer over on your legendary unique armor, you can make 4 golems. You can make 4. That's why the race is +1 to skeleton to transfer over, because it is the only way in the game to make 4 golems.
Fair enough. Let's see what else we have. With people's faith rapidly declining in Lost Ark, D4 is releasing as a perfect time to capture that audience. I think that's a really good statement as well, for sure. Thank you, Bannaby, for the sub, man. I appreciate that. What new necro playstyle or ability would you and Aaron like to see in an ARPG? New playstyle. I don't think there is any new playstyle that I would like to see, because of I believe you would agree to me, Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong, that like the whole D2 nostalgic approach was like that sweet spot. A big large army, undead like minions, wraiths, skeletons, zombies, that kind of theme. That's Minions. That's what you want to play. That's the approach I want to have. So it's more about fine-tuning that approach more than coming up with new ways of doing it. But that's also because of the nostalgic value. But what's your take on that question?
Yeah, first off, the chat keeps going off. The check Discord, Aaron, someone just won the race. So congratulations if somebody just won the race. So
claps in channel, boys. Right? Claps in the channel.
The winner of my race gets to do a design stream where I make them their own custom hat, and they get to pick the colors and the wording on it. So that should be pretty cool.
That's really cool.
PoE does this to an extent. I want more control over my minions in the form of stances. So I could put them into defensive stance or aggressive stance or V stance or surround me in a box stance or stack on top of each other stance, or just ways where it's like, I don't want any defense. Like I want them, once they clear 2 screens worth of enemies, to come back to find me. or in a boss fight where I know I'm squishy, defensive stance where they don't move more than 2 or 3 tiles off of me. That is a level of control.
Yeah, I pitched that
That's what I
to
want.
GGG. I said, hey, why don't you just let us have 3 different ways of summoning zombies? One would be the way that they're designed now, but the skill would give you 2 other ways of summoning them. One would be marked red or something. They're super aggressive. And the other one would be green. Hey, they're super defensive. They don't want to leave you. They're covering your ass. If the enemies comes close to you, then they're going to attack it. And their solution was to introduce 2 support gems instead.
Well, but and my love for ARPGs comes was not my first love. My first love was actually RTS and playing Red Alert and StarCraft. And those games is probably why I love Minions so much, is because you're controlling a large army. And in an RTS, you could literally set these 2, like control 1, control 2, to protect this tank or this queen. It would be so cool to bring that to an ARPG. Like, hey, skeletons, if the golem is taking 50% damage, you literally defend that golem, you know, or something like that. Like, basically control. Like, I see control as the future.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's a cool way to do it. Absolutely. I sent the screenshot in chat there from Roots from the winner of your race. Actually, I sent it in the Discord chat for you as well. RTS controls for minions would be amazing. Yeah, I think so. But I mean, again, it's a lot about this balance act between fine-tuning what we have versus new mechanics versus new ways of playing it, to then separate that from reinventing the wheel. And it's just a balance act to what the game developers are looking to do. Another question, I would love to see a new mechanic where you can combine minions, like having a screen to combine minions together to amalgamate something new. But don't we have that in last Epoch with the Abomination, right?
Yeah, you have a summon abomination, and it literally eats minions to create an abomination. And depending on which minions you eat, I shouldn't say eat, you blob together in a blender, not only does it change what the abomination looks like, it also changes what skills it does. It's a fun minion. I literally never use it.
I never liked the 1 minion thingy, which is why I was so surprised to enjoy the 1 minion archmage I did, but that's a ranged minion, so
that's because its life always goes down. So it's like I got to make an army to recreate it to then remake the army, and then it slowly dies. Like it's slow. Like it's slow. But abomination is awesome. It's a cool skill.
Oh, for sure. That kind of covers all the questions. Do you have anything else you want to bring up to finalize this, or?
No, thank you for bringing me on. I really had a blast talking ARPG. I know I can get long-winded and go. My YouTube channel is Action RPG. I stream on Twitch 3 to 4 days a week on Aaron Action RPG. And you're always willing to come by and chat. I'm here to help.
Absolutely. Guys, if you haven't, check him out. There's going to be links for those of you watching this on YouTube. There's going to be a link to his content in the descriptions below. And don't forget to, leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz, whatever the fuck. But do check him out, give him a follow, and check him out on Twitch. And we definitely have to reconnect about some collab in the future. That could be fun for sure. Again, thanks for coming. And for those of you watching YouTube and here on Twitch for the stream, we're going to cut off the podcast and basically say thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Until then, stay safe and keep rocking.